Welcome, listener, in the shadows. We bring stories into the light. Join me as we explore the encounters no one speaks of and the things that watch from the dark. If you're still here after all that, you already know the kind of stories we tell. The kind that crawl under your skin, that echo in the quiet when the episode ends. If you want to carry a piece of that darkness with you, wear what haunts you. Our exclusive line of merch is made for listeners who feel more at home in the uncanny, the unspoken, the things that don't make sense in the daylight. Shirts, hoodies, and other gear, designed with that same atmosphere of dread, mystery, and whispered wrongness. Candles support the channel, feed the stories. You can grab yours at https://theshadows printify me, and as always, don't look behind you. Not My Brother, Chapter 1. Homecoming, the road into Lukachukai was bone dry and ribboned with heat. Dust lifted in idle curls from the truck tires as Mara pressed deeper into the Chadeauxs Mountains, their slopes blued with pine and memory. The old Navajo Nation roads hadn't changed. Still the same washboard ruts and bleached cattle guards, the same rusted signs barely clinging to the English over the Dene. She hadn't been back in over a decade, but the land didn't seem to care. It folded her into its silence like it had never let her go. The sun had just started its slow descent behind the ridgeline when she pulled into the clearing. The Hogan stood exactly as she remembered, eight-sided, cedar log walls weathered to grey, its doorway facing east as tradition demanded. Smoke trickled from the stovepipe, lazy and pale. A couple of goats wandered nearby, and behind them, further off, the red earth gave way to the narrow valley where the old family sheep pens sagged in disrepair. Her grandmother, at City, was already outside, stooped and sweeping the packed dirt with a bundle of juniper branches. She didn't look up when Mara stepped out of the truck. "You're late," City said. "I drove straight through from Gallup," Mara replied, brushing road grit from her jeans. "Didn't want to stop." City looked up then. Her face was sun-carved and still, but her dark eyes flickered as she studied her granddaughter. "You look tired." "I am." They embraced briefly. City smelled of cedar and sage, of smoked wool and old years. It felt both warm and wrong, as if time had snapped but hadn't told them yet. When they separated, Mara's chest felt hollow. "Come," her grandmother said, already turning toward the Hogan. "It's almost night. We eat before dark. Then we talk." Inside, the air was warm and heavy with wood smoke. Mara took in the room, the stove in the center, the rugs, the medicine bundles tied with sinew and red twine. Every part of the space spoke of careful rituals and long-held respect. She kept her eyes low, remembering how her mother taught her to enter with humility. They ate mutton stew and fry bread in silence. Only when the bowls were empty and the sky outside turned that deep purpling blue did City finally speak again. "Your brother is dead," she said plainly. "Buried yesterday. You should have been here." "I couldn't get off work," Mara whispered. "He asked for you in the end, but his mouth," City looked down at her hands. "His mouth was wrong. The things he said, they were not my grandson's words." Mara blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" Her grandmother's voice dropped, hoarse and thin. "I mean the thing in that hospital bed wasn't just my grandson anymore." The silence returned, deep enough to feel. Mara reached into her coat pocket, pulling out the only photo she had of Caleb, her younger brother, smiling through a split lip at age 13, after a fight he'd won with a local boy. She ran her thumb over the glossy surface. "He was just sick, City. You said it was wasting disease. You said it was fast." "It was," her grandmother said. "Too fast and too strange. He screamed like a woman in the night, spoke in Navajo he didn't know. And before he died, he asked me to dig a grave facing west." "That's backwards," Mara muttered. "I didn't do it," City said quickly. "I buried him as we should, east-facing, proper prayers. And I burned the clothes he died in." Mara's stomach felt like it had swallowed cold water. "That's good, that's right." Her grandmother nodded, then paused. "You are staying in the cinder block house, the one your mother built." "I thought I'd stay here with you," Mara said gently, but City only shook her head. "No, not tonight. Not after the thing that knocked on the door last night." Mara stared at her. "Someone came. Her grandmother's eyes narrowed. Not someone, something, wearing your brother's skin. Outside, a coyote howled. Distant, thin, high-pitched. But it was followed by something else. A second call, lower, fractured, like a throat trying to shape words it hadn't earned. Atsidie's voice barely rose above a whisper. Don't open your door after sunset. Don't speak to what's outside. And don't ever say its name. Chapter 2, What's Left Behind. Rain fell in a hush that morning, a soft patter on the metal roof of the shed behind the hogan. Not enough to soak the red earth, but enough to turn the dust to paste. Rosalind could hear it through the cracked window above her bed, the one that always got stuck in summer, that Toady used to shove open with his boot when it jammed. The memory snagged her breath. She hadn't slept, not really. She had laid there, eyes dry and hot, tracing the texture of the stucco wall with her thoughts. Every creak in the old beams, every rustle of wind made her stomach twist. Down the hall, the kettle was already singing, a rising note that mingled with the faint rhythm of prayer her grandmother whispered beneath it. She dressed in silence. Jeans, boots with dust still crusted on the soles, the grey hoodie Toady used to steal when the nights got cold. His smell was long gone from it, but the weight remained. That, somehow, was worse. When she entered the kitchen, Shimasani didn't look up. She was pouring cedar tea into a chipped mug. Her hands moved slow but sure, knotted by age and arthritis, but never hesitant. Her braids were still tight, even in mourning. She wore black. There's food if you want it, she said quietly, gesturing to the pan on the stove, scrambled eggs, fry bread wrapped in a towel to keep warm. Rosalind sat. She hadn't eaten much the day before. The funeral had left her with a hollow nothing that food couldn't fill. But she took the plate anyway. She didn't want to be watched for refusing. Shimasani finally looked at her then, those sharp black eyes, set into a face carved by decades of desert wind and dry laughter and hard, earned grief. Eyes that had seen 2 wars, 3 generations, and more burials than she would ever say out loud. You should not have come alone, her grandmother said. Rosalind blinked, caught off guard. I'm not alone. I have you. That is not what I mean, the old woman said. You carry too much inside. He will smell that. Rosalind's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Smell what? Her grandmother didn't answer. They spent the day cleaning, the kind of cleaning that felt ceremonial. Shimasani made a slow circuit around the hogan, burning cedar and juniper. She swept with a yucca brush and spit on the thresholds. Rosalind helped, watching closely, trying to remember the order of things, what plants were for banishing, which corners had to be touched last. The air inside the home grew thick with smoke and memory. Toadie's bedroom had already been stripped bare. She'd helped pack his things 2 days ago. There was something painful in how neat it all looked now, like he had never existed in it. The scent of his aftershave still lingered on the mirror's edge. A razor lay crooked in its stand. Rosalind touched it. The grief came in fast and bright, the kind that left you gasping with no sound. She sat on his bed and pulled a photo out of her back pocket, one she hadn't looked at in years. Toady at 15, grinning with a scraped knee and a bent fishing pole. The sun had bleached it at the edges. He'd caught a trout the size of his forearm that day and made their uncle take 3 pictures, just to be sure one was good. They had fought that night, over nothing. She couldn't remember what, only that she'd called him selfish and he'd called her cruel, and they didn't talk for days after. Rosalind pressed the photo to her chest. I'm sorry, she whispered. I wish I'd said goodbye better. That night, she stood on the porch while Shimasani prayed over the fire. The wind picked up, whistling through the low scrub beyond the property line. Coyotes called, high, lonely yips in the far hills. Rosalind closed her eyes. For a moment, the wind shifted. It came from behind her, a slow exhale, warm against the nape of her neck. And in it, something that wasn't quite a voice, just a shape, the shape of his voice. The way he used to say her name. She turned. There was nothing behind her but darkening land and the creaking skeleton of the fence. Go inside, her grandmother said sharply from the fire. Rosalind obeyed. She didn't ask why. Chapter 3, something in the dust. The wind had changed. Not in the way storms rolled in over the mesa, but subtly, wrongly. There was no scent of rain, no thunderheads on the horizon. but the pinwheels of dust that lifted from the clay path that wound around the back of the hogan moved like they were being spun by hands, not gusts. Quiet, curious hands. Lee noticed it when she stepped out with the basket of ashes. The funeral had been that morning, small as per tradition. Uncle Avery had led the closing rites. Her brother's body had been burned before sunrise, his ashes collected carefully in a ceremonial bundle and placed in the fire pit behind the family hogan, as their elders had done for generations. No grave, no marker. He was released back to the land. But now, standing in that place where fire had turned her brother to smoke, Lee felt the land wasn't content with the release. Something remained. The wind circled her ankles, stirred the edge of her skirt. It made her flinch, not from cold, but from something instinctive, like being touched by something that shouldn't be able to touch. She looked up and scanned the mesas. Red rock, quiet. No coyotes, no birds. Just that emptiness that always feels less like silence and more like something waiting to speak. Behind her, the door to the hogan creaked open. "Don't leave your shadow in that place too long," came her grandmother's voice. Calm, firm. Some things in the wind remember footsteps. Lee stepped away from the pit and came inside, brushing her shoes before entering. Her grandmother was boiling cedar, its sharp, purifying scent cutting through the stillness. The older woman's face was hard to read, that beautiful Dene mix of wind-carved stone and deep, still water. Lee had always thought her grandmother had eyes that saw too much, like the land had given her more than one lifetime's worth of knowing. "Did you feel it?" Lee asked. "Outside. I always feel it." Her grandmother motioned for her to sit and drink. Lee did, cradling the warm mug, staring into the dark broth. "It doesn't feel finished, like he's not gone." "He's not," her grandmother said plainly. "But what's left isn't your brother." Lee's fingers tightened on the cup. "You've lived away too long, child," her grandmother continued. "Where the wind doesn't speak and the roads are straight and loud. You forgot how things return here, how grief is never alone." "I haven't forgotten," Lee said softly. "I just didn't want to believe it." Her grandmother sat across from her. "Then you will soon." That night, the sky bruised into a deep, deep purple, the kind of color Lee remembered from childhood nights when she and Michael would sit outside, bundled in blankets, counting stars before sleep. The kind of color that seemed to stretch forever, making you feel very small and very seen. The hogan was quiet. No music, no television, just the fire crackling in the small hearth and the distant hiss of wind curling through the desert brush. Lee couldn't sleep. She rose and stepped outside barefoot, wrapping a shawl around her. The air had teeth. Somewhere far off, she heard a branch snap, a sharp, deliberate sound. She turned, and there he was, standing at the edge of the road, just where the cedar trees began. Michael. His shoulders slumped slightly, just as she remembered. His favorite shirt, green plaid, fluttering faintly in the wind. Jeans scuffed at the knees. But it wasn't the clothes or the posture that made Lee's heart stutter. It was his face. His face was right. It wasn't decayed, wasn't monstrous. It was Michael as she remembered him, eyes dark and wet in the moonlight, mouth slack like he wanted to speak but couldn't or wouldn't. She stepped forward, her throat tightened. "Michael," he tilted his head slowly. Behind her, the door flew open. Her grandmother's voice cracked the stillness like a whip. "Do not speak again." Lee froze. The old woman's voice lowered to a gravel whisper. "You buried your brother yesterday," she pointed to the figure. "That thing is wearing what's left." Chapter 4. Footsteps in the juniper. That night, the wind carried the weight of stories. Anita sat at the edge of the bed, cradling the battered cassette player her brother had once used to record bird calls and coyote yips for his biology project. She hadn't played the tapes in years, but her fingers moved without thought, slipping one marked Winter Hollow into the slot. His handwriting, uneven and pressed hard, stretched across the label. Click, hiss, then a small, excited voice. His voice poured out. March 14. 2 coyotes passed east of the fence line. Think they smelled the traps. She hit stop. It had sounded too fresh, too alive, like he was sitting cross-legged beside her again, trying not to laugh when she jumped at the howls echoing over the mesa. His voice had always had that unsteady brightness to it, like he was afraid of losing the words before they finished leaving his throat. Anita swallowed, set the recorder down, let the silence reclaim the room. From the window, the desert stretched into a horizonless dark. The only illumination was the dull orange spill of the porch light and the thin silver line of moonlight painting the hogan down the slope. It was supposed to be empty. She had helped sweep it, close it up, seal the vents and shutter the door. But tonight, something felt different. She stepped to the window, her bare feet silent against the cracked floorboards. Through the warped glass, she saw the silhouette again. A shape taller than she remembered, standing just outside the hogan's door, its posture stiff. Still, as if posing, Anita didn't move. Her eyes adjusted slowly. The outline became clearer. It was her brother, or something wearing his shape. He wasn't looking at her, not directly, but his head was tilted in the way he used to when listening to the elk near say bit ejective or ejective I acute, or trying to hear someone calling from across the canyon. One arm was raised, resting against the frame of the hogan's door, waiting. She opened the window a crack. The wind poured in, dry and bitter, carrying the scent of sage, charred wood and something else. Something coppery, almost wet. Below, the figure turned slightly, just enough. And then she heard it, not in her ears, but somewhere behind her sternum. Nita. It wasn't spoken. It wasn't even breathed. It slid into her, wrong in texture, like someone trying to wear sound that didn't belong to them. Her hands went cold. She slammed the window shut, breath catching. "Nita," came a voice behind her. Anita jumped and spun. Her grandmother stood in the hallway, wrapped in her shawl, face unreadable. "Did it speak to you?" Anita tried to answer. Couldn't. She just nodded. Her grandmother moved into the room, her footsteps heavy, her bones stiff but steady. She reached up and pressed something into Anita's hand, a braided cord, thick with ash and the scent of burnt cedar. "Don't open the door. Don't answer it, no matter what name it wears." Anita looked down at the cord. She knew what it was, a protection charm. Her grandfather had made them for the lambs when coyotes got too bold. "But it," she began. Her grandmother's voice was iron. "That's not your brother. You buried your brother. We all saw him go." Anita stared out the window again, but the shape was gone. No footsteps, no rustling leaves, just a void where a memory had once stood. She turned back, mouth dry. "Then why does it know my name like he used to say it?" Her grandmother's eyes softened, just a breath. "Because grief talks loud and it listens, and sometimes it talks back." She turned and walked away, but before she disappeared into the hallway, she added, "Don't let it in, Nita, even if it cries." Chapter 5. Something that sounds like him. Anita didn't sleep that night. She sat in the corner of her room, knees to her chest. The braid of cedar cord looped tight around her fingers until her knuckles went pale. The cassette player remained on the windowsill beside her, silent, but she swore she could hear a faint whirring under the hiss of the desert wind. Like the magnetic tape wanted to turn again. She didn't dare press play. At one point, she must have drifted off because she woke to the thud of something heavy landing on the porch. Not footsteps, not paws, just weight, settling, pressing the boards. She held her breath and slowly rose to her knees, careful not to disturb the shadows. The window gave her a narrow view of the entryway and what stood just beyond it. It was him, or the thing that kept choosing to wear him. His face in profile was washed grey-blue in the moonlight, and for a moment Anita's grief twisted and begged. It looked like her brother. Same slope of the shoulders, same cowlick on the crown, same tattered hoodie he had been wearing the day they found him in the arroyo, jaw slack and skin bloated from the flood. But his mouth moved too slow, too measured. It opened like he was unsure of how the muscles worked, like he was trying the shape of a smile but didn't remember what one was supposed to feel like. And then it knocked, 3 times. Each knock was careful, deliberate, too human. Anita's breath hitched as she backed into the far corner, her foot brushing against the old woven rug. Her grandmother had placed a line of crushed turquoise and dried juniper powder along the threshold earlier that day, and now she stared at it like it was the only thread holding the world together. The thing outside didn't knock again. Instead, it spoke. "Nita, it's cold. Can you open the door?" Her stomach flipped. It was his voice, exactly his voice, not just the pitch or cadence. It had the weight of memory. how he sounded when he'd come back from hunting trips, sunburned and shivering from crossing meltwater, voice cracking just a little from dehydration. Her legs almost buckled, but there was something wrong, too, because he only ever called her Nita when he was happy, when they were running barefoot down the wash or sneaking pieces of fry bread before dinner. This tone wasn't playful, it was hollow. Anita stared at the door. Her mouth was so dry she couldn't swallow, then it said something else. I left something out by the Hogan. Silence. Then, it's yours, you'll want it back. She covered her ears. She didn't want to know what it meant. Minutes passed, maybe hours. When she finally built the courage to peek again, the porch was empty. No shadow, no voice, but the smell lingered, the wrongness, like rust and damp fur and a thing that had lived too long without skin. By morning, Anita was dressed before the sun cracked the horizon. Her grandmother sat at the kitchen table, slowly grinding cedar into powder with a stone mortar. She didn't look up. I'm going to the Hogan, Anita said quietly. Still, her grandmother didn't lift her eyes, but she stopped grinding. A pause hung between them. Then, if you must go, go with both eyes open, and do not bring anything back in. Anita nodded. The morning air was sharp, like it still remembered snow. Ravens wheeled overhead, their cries oddly muted. The land felt muffled, as if it was holding its breath. When she reached the Hogan, the door stood ajar. Anita froze. She hadn't left it that way. The moment she crossed the doorway, the air changed. Thicker, heavier, and something under her boot cracked. She looked down. At first she thought it was a twig. Then she realized it was a finger bone, small, childlike, half buried beneath the disturbed dust. Her throat closed. Then her eyes landed on the cassette tape lying in the center of the floor. One of hers, not her brother's. The label had been torn off, but she recognized the little chip in the corner. She'd dropped it once while recording a lullaby for her cousin's baby. She hadn't seen it in years. How had it gotten here? Anita reached for it, hand trembling, until something scuttled in the shadows of the far corner. She froze, and a voice from the dark behind the beams whispered with slow, deliberate effort. I remember all your songs, Nita, Chapter 6. What wears the silence? The knock came again that night, 3 times, measured, gentle even, like he didn't want to scare her. Dea sat in the far corner of her room, knees to chest, wrapped in the quilt her mother had sewn from old t-shirts and scraps of denim. The bedroom light was off. Only the amber flicker of the old kerosene lamp from the hallway spilled in under the door. The knocks had started around 1:20 a.m. same time as the night before. She hadn't told Grandma, not yet. She didn't want to make anything real by speaking it aloud, but she'd heard it. The knock, the voice, her brother's voice. He'd said her name like he used to when they were kids, and he found something incredible. A strange rock, an ant with wings, a rusty old bullet casing. Like he couldn't wait to show her. The problem was, it wasn't the words that had shaken her. It was the pace of them. It wasn't how Manny would have spoken. It was what something thought his voice should sound like. She pressed her face against her knees and exhaled slowly. The kerosene lamp hissed in the hallway, a low flame dancing in the draft. Outside, coyotes barked and yipped in a broken rhythm, one distant, the others answering in layers of shrill reply. She was about to close her eyes when the hallway light snapped off. Just gone, like someone had blown it out. The silence that followed was dense. Even the coyotes had gone quiet. And then the doorknob turned. Dea went still. Her heart pounded so loudly it felt like it was in her throat. She didn't look, couldn't. Just below the sound of her own breathing, something scraped against the base of the door. A slow drag, like fingernails across dry wood. Dea, the voice said softly. It's me. She closed her eyes. It sounded just like him, too much like him. Let me in, it's cold. The lock clicked. She hadn't touched it. Her head shot up. The door didn't open, yet. But the sound had been real. Something had tried to unlock it from the other side. Why are you afraid of me? The voice whispered. But it no longer had warmth. It had become soft and flat, as though echoing from a mouth that didn't understand breath. I know everything you know. I know the time we ran from the thunder. I know you cried when Dad left. I know the cave. Dea's skin crawled. It had said the cave. It was a memory no one else knew. A storm had rolled in during a picnic when they were 10 and 12. They'd hidden inside a narrow sandstone crevice in the canyon, clutching each other while lightning flashed above the rim. She'd never told anyone about it, not even Grandma. "I remember your hands were cold. You cried when I held them. You said you didn't want to die." The voice was smiling now. She could hear it. "You said, 'Don't let anything take me.'" The door creaked just slightly, as if something was leaning against it, and then sniffing, low, wet, like an animal trying to place her scent. "I'm so hungry, Dea," the voice murmured. "I want to feel warm again. You can help me, your family." It waited. She didn't respond, didn't even breathe. Then it growled, not like a man, not like an animal, but like a hollow in the earth clearing its throat. And the voice, her brother's voice, spoke one last time. "She buried her grandson yesterday," it mocked. "That thing is wearing what's left." It was Grandma's voice now. Dea shot to her feet and threw open the door. Nothing, no figure, no shadow, no wind, no sound. Only a small pile of dirt, black, damp and crumbling, scattered across the hallway floor, like something had shaken off pieces of the grave. Chapter 7. The story they never finished. Morning came like a wound, raw and oversensitive, the kind of light that didn't feel safe. Dea hadn't slept. The pile of black dirt was still there when she stepped into the hall, bare feet nearly brushing it. She hadn't touched it, wouldn't. Something told her the pieces were deliberate, like shed skin left behind on purpose. She found Grandma in the kitchen, seated at the tiny table, facing the east-facing window. Her tea had gone cold. "Something's wrong," Dea said quietly. Grandma didn't turn. Her eyes were red and puffy, her lips drawn tight. Dea pulled out the chair across from her and sat. "You feel it too?" "Been feeling it," Grandma muttered. "Then why haven't we done something?" Now Grandma did look at her. Her stare wasn't angry. It was tired in a way Dea hadn't seen before. A deep, bone-weary look, like someone who'd fought this thing once already, a long time ago, and had just barely won. "You don't go naming what might be listening," Grandma said. "That's why. You name a thing, it starts to believe it has permission." Dea frowned. "I need more than riddles, Grandma." Grandma leaned forward, whispering like the air itself had ears. "You think your brother was the first. You think you're the first to open a door when something familiar knocked." Dea stared. "You ever hear about my cousin Makita?" Grandma asked. Dea shook her head. "No." "Good. I was hopping. It'd die with me. But maybe that ain't fair. Maybe it's time someone remembered." Makita was 17 when he went missing, Grandma said. A loner, soft-spoken, always off somewhere in the forest near the base of Red Mesa. Said he could feel the bones of the land humming under his feet. He vanished in late autumn, just after the first snow. His parents searched for 3 days before they found him curled up in a shallow wash, naked, shivering, face scratched to hell, mumbling things in a voice that didn't belong to him. "He came back, but not whole," Grandma said. "He walked the house at night, slept on the roof some evenings, stopped eating, wouldn't go near mirrors, would scream if he saw his own reflection in water. Then one night, he asked his sister if he could braid her hair. They used to do that as kids, back when things were still good, so she let him. Sat on the floor, let him sit behind her. He hummed an old lullaby their mother used to sing. But when she turned to thank him, she saw his hands hadn't moved. The braid was never made. He was just miming it, twisting at air. His face was empty, slack and confused. Then he whispered, "I think I brought something back." She said his mouth moved in rhythm, but the words came from behind him. Makita didn't last long after that. They found him in the Arroyo 2 weeks later, Grandma said. But his parents never claimed the body. Dea blinked. "Why not?" Grandma met her eyes. "Because they already buried him the week before." The room was quiet for a long time after that. Dea could hear the old refrigerator humming, the steady drip of the bathroom sink. Finally, she whispered, "So what was it?" Grandma didn't answer right away. She closed her eyes, slow and deliberate. "There are things that wait outside the story," she murmured. "Old ones. Not spirits, not people, not animals, just hunger with a shape. They can't cross over unless you invite them, but they're clever. They don't bang on the door anymore. They talk. They remember." Dea swallowed. "Grandma," she said softly, "it knows the cave." That was when Grandma's face changed. She went pale, her eyes welled. "Oh," she said in a tiny voice. Oh, Meja, then it's already inside. Chapter 8. A voice too familiar. The house held its breath after that. Neither of them spoke for a long time, and when they did, it wasn't much. Just murmurs, ritual things. Boiling cedar, burning copal. Grandma laid out red cornmeal in the four corners of the house. Dare scattered juniper ash along the doors. Her hands trembled as she did it. Not from fear exactly, but from the sensation that something was already watching. Waiting, knowing. Late that night, Dare was jolted from sleep by a knock. 3 knocks, slow, even. Her bedroom door, not the front, not the window, her door. She didn't speak, didn't move. The knocks came again, softer this time, not insistent, inviting. Then a voice, low, smooth. Dee. It was him, Jalen, not almost him, exactly him. The way he used to say her name when he was tired. The slight rasp at the back of the throat from too many sleepless nights. A tone only family could wear. Dee, it's cold out here. I can't find my blanket. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. That voice, her mind knew it. Her body remembered it, but something was wrong. Not the words, not the tone, the timing. That sentence, he hadn't said it in years. Since they were kids. Since they were little and shared a room after their father left and their mother drank herself into dreams. I can't find my blanket. She remembered the night he'd said it. She remembered wrapping him in her old quilt and telling him it would be okay, that she'd protect him. She remembered the smell of dust and cedar smoke, the gentle hush of snow falling outside. That memory wasn't public. It wasn't shared. It lived only in her. So how did something else know it? She didn't move. The shadow beneath her door didn't either. It just lingered. Then the voice changed. It turned low, feral, like something trying to fit inside Jalen's cadence but failing, like it was reading from a script and trying to replicate meaning without ever having felt it. Dee, it said again. Let me in, not a request. An order. It scraped against her skull like teeth across metal. Her throat closed. Then came the sound of laughter. Small, playful, childlike. Remember the way Mom screamed? It asked sweetly. Dare flinched. She hadn't told anyone about that night. The night their mother, drunk and half wild, had woken up screaming, not at them, but about them. Eyes wide with terror, pointing at the hallway, crying, "That's not my son." Jalen had cried for hours. She hadn't thought about it in years. Then silence. She waited. 5 minutes, 10, 15. The shadow eventually disappeared. She didn't sleep. In the morning, Grandma was already waiting in the kitchen again. Before Dare could speak, she said, "It came to you." Dare nodded, still pale. "Did it ask to come in?" Dare nodded again. Grandma's face twisted into something between rage and grief. "Then it's trying to finish the story." "What story?" Grandma didn't answer at first. Then, the one that started when it first wore Jalen's face. Dare sat down, dizzy, the world tilting just slightly. "Grandma, I think it knows things about me, private things." "It always does," Grandma said bitterly. "That's its way. It don't just wear the skin, it learns the lives. It takes your memories and feeds them back to you like it owns them." Dare whispered, "How do we stop it?" Grandma turned away. Her hands were shaking as she poured water into the kettle. "You don't stop it," she said. "You make it forget you. You starve it." "What does that mean?" "You don't speak to it. You don't let it hear your real voice. You don't call it by the name it wants. And you never, never say his name after dark again." Outside, the wind was picking up again, whistling low through the chimney, almost like someone calling from a long way off, a child's voice. "Dee," but she didn't answer. This time she didn't answer. Chapter 9. The invitation. Rain came again that night. Not the desert's usual whisper, but a sudden, insistent deluge that clattered on the metal roof of the trailer like 1,000 anxious fingers. Olivia lay in her narrow bed, wrapped in a quilt that smelled faintly of cedar and mothballs. Her grandmother's old mutt, Seeker, trembled at her feet, tail tucked tight, ears flattened. Even he had stopped barking. Only the rain spoke. She hadn't seen Micah for 3 days. Not since the night he had stood at the window and whispered her name in a voice not quite his own. But she felt him, in the long silences between raindrops, in the strange absence of crows, in the low, dull ache behind her eyes. He was waiting. A knock came, gentle, 3 taps, then again, firmer, rhythmic. She sat up, breath caught in her throat, staring at the door across the dark trailer. The knock didn't repeat, but she didn't need it to. She already knew who it was. Let me in. The thought wasn't her own. It arrived like a stray gust, blowing through the hallways of her mind. Not a demand, a plea. I'm cold. Her phone buzzed suddenly on the nightstand. A text. Micah, Liv, you up? Her fingers moved without her. She picked up the phone, pulse roaring in her ears. Another message. Micah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. I didn't understand how much it would hurt. I'm not trying to hurt you. I just want to be with you, like before. A third message blinked in. Micah, please don't leave me out here alone. Her thumb hovered over the screen. The light from the phone cast long shadows across the room. Then something knocked again, just once, on the metal door. Her body moved without command. She stepped barefoot across the cold floor and approached the door. The rain had stopped. The world beyond was still. She placed her hand on the doorknob. Behind her, the hallway light flickered on. Don't, came her grandmother's voice, tired, cracked, but firm. Olivia turned. The old woman stood there in her robe, face like carved stone, eyes reflecting the dark. You opened that door, she said. You invite it in. I think it's him, Olivia whispered, even as her heart said otherwise. No, Chili, her grandmother said. Micah is gone. He's resting now, you know that. We did the rites. But he remembers everything. Things only we shared. How can something fake? Because it isn't fake. It's using what was his, wearing it like skin. That's why it's so good at sounding real. It's what makes it dangerous. The doorknob was warm under Olivia's hand. Too warm, like breath. Her phone buzzed again. Micah, you said you'd always be there for me. Was that a lie? A scream cracked from outside, and Olivia's breath caught. But it wasn't just a scream. It was Micah's laugh, bright, boyish, unshakably familiar, shifting midway into something deeper, wet and hungry, like bones breaking inside a throat. Don't listen to it, her grandmother said. You listen long enough, you forget who you are. The lights flickered again. A gust of hot wind burst in through the cracks around the door, bringing with it the stench of wet fur and scorched meat. Olivia backed away. The door rattled just once, and then silence. Only then did she feel her legs shake. I think it almost got me, she whispered. Her grandmother nodded solemnly. That's how it starts. Chapter 10. What runs in the blood? They found a dead coyote the next morning, its body torn open, entrails arranged in a spiral, like a wheel made of red ropes. It lay just outside the edge of the property line, right where the desert started to slope down into the gulch. Olivia didn't scream when she saw it. She just stared. The desert had always taken things, but it had never returned them in such deliberate shape. Her grandmother stood beside her, wind tugging at her shawl. That's not a warning, she murmured. That's a greeting. What does that mean? Olivia asked. Her voice was hollow, like it had been scooped out sometime during the night, and she hadn't noticed until now. It thinks you're ready, like you've been softened. The old woman squinted into the sun. It means it's time we go to the place your brother saw it first, the place he stopped talking about. Olivia turned to her. The arroyo. No, her grandmother's eyes didn't move. Further. That afternoon, they drove deep into the mesas. Olivia guided the truck while her grandmother held a pouch of cornmeal in her lap and whispered in Diné. The roads were barely roads at all, just memories etched into stone by generations of tires. The radio stayed off. The land was speaking. They passed burned trees and dry washes. Old wooden poles stood like bones, relics from a telephone line that hadn't hummed in decades. Then came the ruins, a cluster of sand-packed stone walls half swallowed by the earth. Micah had gone there once, alone, when he was 16. He never went back. Her grandmother stepped out of the truck and walked with purpose, dust rising behind her bare heels. Olivia followed, clutching the satchel of offerings. The sky pressed low and grey. In the center of the ruins sat a shallow depression, a fire pit, maybe, or something older. Scorch marks still lined its rim, as if a great heat had once blistered the stone. Olivia knelt beside it, fingers tracing its edge. She felt it then, a pull, not outward, not inward, but sideways, like a seam in the world. It fed here, her grandmother said. Long before we had names for it, before your great-great-grandfather saw the first tracks by the sheep corral. These kinds of things, they linger, they wait. Olivia stared at the ash. It was fresh. Is it still here? No, not now, but it's watching. A low gust rattled the dry grass, and for a moment, Olivia thought she saw something just at the edge of her vision, a long silhouette on a ridge. Dog-like, watching, not breathing. Her grandmother knelt and began to scatter the cornmeal in a circle. As she chanted, her voice thinned in the air, becoming part of the wind. You have to understand, child. This thing wearing your brother's face, it doesn't just want to scare you. It wants your recognition, your permission. Olivia looked up. Why me? The old woman's face softened. Because grief is a door, and yours is still wide open. That night, Olivia dreamed of Micah. He stood in their childhood bedroom, lit only by the pale glow of the moon through the window. His skin looked brittle, like sunbaked clay. His eyes were too wide, his smile too still. I didn't mean to go out there, he said. I just heard something calling me. What did it say? He paused. It said it knew where Mom went, that it could bring her back. Olivia felt tears on her cheeks. Micah, Mom died in the hospital. He looked confused, then smiled again. No, she didn't. She stepped closer. Yes, she did. I was there. His head tilted and tilted and tilted until his chin touched his chest and his neck made no sound at all. You weren't. His voice deepened into something wet, gurgling. You came after, too late. You always come after. And then he moved, not walked, but glided toward her, mouth stretched too wide, arms too long, whispering her name like it was a prayer and a curse. She awoke gasping, fingers twisted in the sheets, her own voice hoarse from screaming. Outside, the coyotes had gone silent again. Chapter 11. Beneath the skin, the morning light was the color of bone. It didn't feel like a new day. It felt like an echo. Olivia stood in front of the mirror in the hallway, staring at her own reflection, watching for the twitch that never came. Her eyes were bloodshot. Her hands trembled when she tried to braid her hair. She didn't feel alone, not in the house, not in her skin. Micah, she whispered, not because she believed it was him, but because part of her still hoped. That stubborn, clinging root of childhood. If you said his name softly enough, maybe he'd come back soft too. But the thing that came instead was footsteps, slow, deliberate ones, padding across the wooden floor from the back hallway. Olivia held her breath. The mirror reflected only her, but she felt him behind her, close enough to touch. She didn't turn around. Instead, she said, I know what you are. The footsteps stopped. The air thickened like syrup. The temperature dropped, not in degrees, but in belonging, like something native to frost had entered a warm space and refused to leave. You're not him. You're just something wearing him. A voice rose behind her. But you let me in, didn't you? It wasn't a growl. It wasn't a whisper. It was a note, a sound not meant for human throats. You opened the door. I didn't know, she said. You knew. She turned then. The hallway was empty, but on the floor just beneath the window sat the old Polaroid from their kitchen wall. The one that had gone missing the week Micah died. She picked it up with shaking fingers. It was of them, aged 6 and 8, smiling at the county fair. Only now, the Micah in the photo was different. Too many teeth in his mouth, eyes not reflecting light, and something behind him in the background. A shape she didn't remember from the day it was taken. A shadow with hooves and no face, standing just beyond the carousel. Her grandmother had already prepared the bundle when she entered the living room. Cloth-wrapped, tied with sinew, soaked in cedar smoke. She was sitting with her eyes closed, speaking a low protection prayer. Olivia sat beside her and waited until the words were finished. I want to send it back, she said. You can't, her grandmother replied. It won't go back. Then what do I do? You survive it, you outlast it, you refuse it. That's the only way it dies, if no one calls it by name, if no one welcomes it in. Olivia looked down at the bundle. But I already did. The silence that followed was sharp enough to draw blood. Her grandmother sighed. Then we bind it, not forever, but long enough to bury it deep, to give it no mouths to speak through, no family to wear. Olivia swallowed hard. How? We take it back to the fire pit. We offer what it wants, but deny it what it needs. What does it need? To be believed. They left at dusk. The truck was heavy with supplies. cornmeal, salt, ash from burned juniper, and the remains of Micah's belongings. His baseball cap, his journal, the cracked phone she had pulled from the arroyo weeks ago. The landscape felt different now. Maury then watched, anticipated, like something was waiting for them to reach the old ruins where the fire pit lay open like a wound in the desert. When they arrived, the wind had stilled. No insects, no birds, just that terrible hush, the kind that comes before a scream. Her grandmother moved with practiced urgency, drawing circles in the earth, placing objects in cardinal positions. Olivia stood inside the ring, clutching the photo like a weapon. Then came the voice. It was his voice again, Micah's. "Liv, it's cold. You left me out here." She turned. He stood just beyond the circle. His feet didn't touch the ground. "You don't have to do this," he said, blinking with that same gentle smile he used to give her when they shared a blanket during storms. "I just want to come home." Olivia stepped forward. Her grandmother caught her arm. "Don't let it speak like him," the old woman hissed. "It's feeding off your longing, off the pieces that still want." Tears streamed down Olivia's face. "You're not him." The thing's expression didn't change, but its mouth began to widen. Quietly, slowly, like a canvas being stretched. A second row of teeth revealed itself. Its skin began to pulse, shifting colors, textures, like it hadn't decided which version of Micah it wanted to wear. "You called me back, sister," it said, and I answered. And then it charged. Chapter 12, the last light, the ash had cooled. Ashley stood at the edge of the mesa, where the stone ring had burned through the night. What was left of the thing that wore her brother's skin smoldered in grey, flaking patches. It hadn't screamed when it burned. It had only spoken in his voice, soft and imploring until the last breath. "Ash, why are you doing this? Don't you remember me?" But now it was silent, and finally it was still. Her grandmother hadn't moved far. She sat behind her, legs tucked under the old Pendleton blanket, eyes half closed, and her face carved by the desert wind. In the silence, she held a small gourd rattle in her lap, fingers gently moving it in a rhythm no one else could follow. The motion was automatic, part of a language too old for words. "You feel it?" she finally asked, without looking. Ashley nodded, her mouth too dry to speak. Something had lifted, the weight in the air, the pressure behind her eyes. The way sound had bent strangely for days. The world felt solid again, unwarped by whatever presence had followed her since that night outside the Hogan. The stars above were crisp again, still distant, still ancient, but no longer staring back. She stepped forward and dropped what was left of her brother's watch, now blackened, the leather strap fused, from her pocket into the center of the ash ring. Not to bury it, not to keep it, only to let it rest. Her grandmother rose beside her. "Come, there's still the final song to sing." The next morning, the sunrise was honest again. They walked the sheep trail back to the homestead, the dogs at a comfortable distance behind. For the first time in days, they followed without fear. Ashley could hear their soft panting, smell their warm, dusty fur. Alive, ordinary, blessedly so. As they reached the Hogan, Ashley turned to look at the cedar trees beyond the cattle fence. Her chest tightened. Nothing was there, but still, part of her would always listen. She didn't return to Flagstaff right away. Instead, she stayed, helped tend to the sheep, fixed the north wall of the Hogan where the cold crept in. Every day, she rose before dawn and helped her grandmother grind corn for blue mush, carry water from the pump, and sweep the morning dust from the doorway. And at night, she dreamed of her brother, not the thing that wore him, but the real one, the child who carved constellations into the ceiling beams, the teenager who wrapped his hand over hers to help her steady her first rifle, the boy who chased coyotes off with pebbles and bad jokes. Sometimes he said nothing in the dreams, sometimes he just stood beside her, but he never asked to come inside, not anymore. "You remember now," her grandmother told her one evening by the fire. "That's the trick of it. These things, these dark ones, they get in through what you forget." Ashley stared into the flames. But it knew him, all of him. It knew what you knew, and only what you knew. But it sounded so much like him. Her grandmother smiled, the kind of smile that was almost sadness. "The coyote knows how to sound like the lamb, doesn't make it less hungry." Ashley closed her eyes. "I just miss him." "I know." A long silence. And that's what it wears. The wind passed over the house, cold, dry, and ordinary. No voices in it now, no names carried in the dirt. Ashley rose, pulled her coat close, and stepped outside. Above her, the stars began to gather, clear and sharp. She could see the Big Dipper arcing over the Hogan, the red spark of Antares low on the horizon, and Orion, faint but climbing, still hunting, still watching. She didn't call out, she didn't answer. Instead, she closed the door behind her and locked it. You made it back for now, but the things in the dark never truly leave, do they? They watch, they wait, and perhaps they remember you now too. If you want to hear more, if you dare to listen again, step back into the shadows. Like the video, subscribe, but know this, some doors once opened do not close so easily.